Mr. Campbell, thank you very much indeed for accepting my invitation for the interview. Let me start with the Western Africa. In recent years, the groups such as the fundamental Islamic groups such as Boko Haram or ISIS take some serious actions in Western African countries such as Nigeria, Mali, or Niger. What is the reasons that comes from?
The resurgence of militant activity right across the Western Sahel usually has local roots. In other words, what causes a particular episode will usually be quite local. It's important, I think, not to overestimate or overstate the degree of coordination amongst the various groups that are involved. It's also important, I think, to bear in mind that the line between these militant groups and criminal organizations is extremely thin. The area in which they are operating is one in which criminal activity, particularly arms smuggling and kidnapping, has been present for a very long time. Mm-hmm. So, sorting out what is criminal and what is political or religious is very often difficult to do.
So you mean it's roots on local people, right?
Yes.
So what is the main reason that these local people attract to these fundamental groups? I mean, is it back to their traditions, or is it back to their poverty, or something else?
I think in effect it's all of the above. The region is very, very poor. It's one of the poorest regions in the world. The population is growing explosively. Climate change is impacting on the region, and climate change leads to changes in internal migration patterns, particularly amongst those who raise cattle. Then, two, government authority in the region tends to be very thin and very slight. You put all of these factors together, and you're talking about an extremely complicated set of circumstances that does not lend itself to simple analysis.
Mr. Campbell, some people or some experts believe that the countries such as Saudi Arabia, along with their large investment in Africa, promote the ideology of fundamentalist Islam. How do you evaluate this opinion?
I think we have to be very careful not to overgeneralize. The Saudi presence in the region is less now than it was, say, 20 years ago, when various Saudi charities were involved in building mosques and establishing Islamic schools. But that presence is not nearly as strong now as it once was.
So you believe that this idea is not completely clear, that Saudi Arabia behind the ideology of fundamental Islam in Africa, right?
I think, in fact, what we have to do is we have to focus on the local elements as opposed to outside elements. Now, Salafism and the Salafist forms of Islam have become much more prominent in Nigeria, over the past 20 or 30 years than they were before. But there are many ways that Salafist ideas have entered the discourse, by no means solely because of the Saudis.
Mr. Campbell, what is the reason for the Nigerian government's harsh treatment of the country Shia Muslim and their leader Sheikh Zakzaki?
The government has said that it would, with each particular episode that Shia demonstrations have, in effect, disturbed public order. The more notorious episodes, such as the one in Kaduna in 2016, are in the process of being investigated. And of course, we are all anticipating reading what the report actually says. Now, in the past, the Nigerian government has not always released reports. It is to be hoped that in this case, they will.
So, Mr. Campbell, I have another question about outsider effects. What do you think about the African Union? How the African Union can help to the countries such as Nigeria or Mali to fight with the ISIS or Boko Haram?
I would focus instead of the African Union. I would focus instead on regional security organizations, particularly the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS. Now, these regional security organizations have very close ties to the African Union, and they work directly together. But ECOWAS is actually there on the ground. Now, you are asking, what can organizations like this do? I would suggest that they can facilitate cooperation amongst the states that are involved. In other words, they can promote closer diplomatic ties. But I don't think that the issues that we have been talking about lend themselves to a purely military solution. Instead, to address the questions of lawlessness in a very large region requires a multifaceted approach, including various political and economic reforms.
So you mean it's all back to their own governments that do the reform about reform societies, do some reform on societies or economic, right?
That's right. That's right.
How do you assess the future of Nigeria in the light of current political and social tensions?
The country is in fact challenged in many different areas. But an important thing to remember about Nigeria is it is astonishingly resilient. It survived a major civil war, the civil war between 1967 and 1970, in which up to 2 million people died. It has survived boom and bust oil economy. About 6 months ago, the international price of oil dropped to almost nothing. It has recovered at least somewhat in the period since. Further, the longer Nigeria functions, and it's now been functioning as an entity since 1960, the longer it functions, the more resilient it becomes. So while not wishing to minimize the present challenges, I think the outlook for Nigeria is positive.
Okay, Mr. Campbell, thank you very much indeed for accept my interview and give me your time. Anything else to say?
I don't think so, but thank you so very much.
Thank you very much indeed. Have a nice day. Have a nice day.